Hello, I'm Hughes, and this is YouthUniverse. Here at YouthUniverse, we work with youth and young adults, online and offline, who are doing powerful things in the way of putting their faith into practice here in the city of Atlanta, here in the state of Georgia, the United States, and around the globe. We look forward to you being a part of our season this year. We're pleased to have joining us today Clint, Fluker, and Rahim of the Tony Blair Faith Foundation. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Glad that you were able to be a part of our conversation dealing with youth and young adult ministries, as well as just young people of faith. What's going on here in the city of Atlanta, the state of Georgia, our nation, United States, as well as globally.
So we're here from the Tony Blair Faith Foundation. So Tony Blair, when he left office in the UK, I think he was really interested in the role of faith in a globalized world and what that really means. And so he commissioned 30 fellows from all over the world, from India, the UK, Canada, and America, people of all different faiths. And so Clint and I were selected and paired up. I'm a Muslim. And
okay. I'm a confused Christian, but I do my best.
And so we are working together here in Atlanta at MedShare, which is our host organization, to promote interfaith dialogue and common action for social justice with a specific focus on malaria.
Okay.
And yes, well, we were both in different locations before we got to this. I was in South Korea, and I applied for the program, and I was particularly interested in the possibility of being at MedShare International. MedShare is a health nonprofit, and that's where we're based. It's in Decatur, actually. And what they do is they take surplus medical supplies here in the Atlanta area, which they get from 32 hospitals, and we put bins there where doctors can put in the surplus medical supplies. We also get them from medical manufacturers, and then we ship them abroad to countries in need, where hospitals and clinics can receive those materials.
Okay. But what are some ways in which the interfaith community can really come alongside and support the work that you're doing?
Well, I think one initiative that we're doing at MedShare this year, bridging the gap between surplus and need, is to bring different faiths together for interfaith sorting sessions. One thing that MedShare does is when we bring in the medical supplies, we sort those supplies, box them, and prepare them for shipment to other countries. And the volunteers, about 12,000 volunteers come through a year in order to help us do that. And one way that we're incorporating the interfaith communities in Atlanta to help us with this is to do interfaith sorting sessions. So usually when we do service, we come together and we don't actually know who's in the room with us. We'll come with our community, we'll sort with our community, we'll serve with our community, and then just 2 feet away there's another community right there, and we haven't engaged them. So during the interfaith sorting sessions, we bring 2 to 3 faith communities together, and we have them reflect on service and why they do it. We don't want people to just, leave and not know anyone else's name, not know what faith they represent, what community, the history that's surrounding, why they're doing what they do. And we've done this about once a month, and we're trying to do that twice a month.
Yeah, and you talked about 9/11, and so on the 10th anniversary of 9/11, we had around 70 students from Emory University come, and they were an interfaith group, and we did the sorting session, and then we had a reflection at the end to discuss why people had chosen to serve on 9/11. And it was incredible. We really heard just amazing, beautiful thoughts from people of all different faith backgrounds. And so I think it's a great way where you're actually combining both action and dialogue, because I think you can sit and talk all the time and not do action, but then you can also be acting but not really get a chance to reflect. And so we've designed, I think, a really great experience, and all the communities that have participated so far have really, really enjoyed it. So
we were talking about what does faith look like in a post 9/11 context, and I know that those are some of your shared experiences as well, and would love to hear how that has happened or has shaped you as you have come of age.
Yeah. So I think my personal story and why I came into this fellowship. So I just graduated from Northwestern, and a lot of my time that I spent there was, was studying really international development issues and the issues of social justice, like in the world. And I spent a lot of time in Turkey, specifically studying women's rights issues within the Muslim world. And so I was always really intrigued by that. And for me, I think service and working on these issues is an inherent part of being a Muslim. But I think, as you mentioned, 9/11 really did fundamentally change the way Muslims in America, I think, identified themselves. And so I think it's an interesting time in America for religion and people of faith. And so for me, this fellowship, I think, was an amazing opportunity because we were finally able to find a place where I could both kind of engage in like interfaith conversation and dialogue, because personally I really haven't done a whole lot of it before. So this is kind of a new experience for me, and I'm combining that with, you know, translating that into action, like actually taking action for the world and making a difference in malaria. And I think that's really at the heart of this fellowship, and why I was so interested in it is because it's not just about bringing faith communities together and talk about what we can agree on, especially in a climate specifically post 9/11 where Muslims are increasingly, I think, marginalized, and there's a lot of discrimination and there's a lot of misconception, but that we're beyond talking, we're actually doing something with our common interest in social justice. So that's kind of my personal story.
I come from a very strong Christian background. My parents are academics and also are very involved in the Atlanta Christian scene, but also globally. They do a lot of work with Christianity and ministry. But for me, I was really interested in the academic side growing up, and it was a struggle for me because I learned a lot about faith that was difficult for me to join in full-fledged. So what I did was I started listening to sermons by Howard Thurman, who is a very interesting person for me. He talked a lot about interfaith and also a lot about civil justice and also about mystics. And I was very moved by some of his sermons where he was discussing the possibility of engaging in a communion with God in unorthodox ways. And by doing that and traveling all over the world, doing things at Morehouse and abroad, I learned that people commune in different ways with God. And that's what moved me to do interfaith work.
Wonderful, wonderful. Great set of experiences from both of you. You mentioned going through your college experiences and some of the discrimination that is part of the climate in Muslims in America. Can you share a little bit more about what you feel like maybe over the past 5, 7 years, I guess 10 years now since 9/11, what are some of the ways in which you've experienced that dialogue? I know you said you're new to the interfaith dialogue, but how just growing up in America during that time period, how has that shaped you as a person?
I think 9/11 set up this strange paradigm that like you couldn't be both Muslim and American, that was an impossible identity to reconcile. And for me, it was interesting because when I traveled, whenever I've left the United States, I've actually realized how I think being Muslim in America is the best way to be Muslim in a lot of ways. I think that the freedom to, you know, interpret our religion as we want, to practice as we want, is really only really unique to America. And so I can't imagine feeling more at home anywhere else. And so America for me is my home, is where I was born and bred. So I think it was constantly trying to figure out like how can we really integrate into society. I think as much as there was a lot of hate and discrimination that came out, there was also a lot of discussion of building bridges. And I think the Muslim community really woke up and realized that we really need to get out there and start talking to people and start engaging in service and start having conversations, because that didn't really happen prior to 9/11. So I think for me, as much as there was like a lot of discrimination and, you know, negativity that came out, there was also an amazing sense of community that developed. And it's, you know, being a Muslim there's no conflict with being American at the same time. And in some ways, standing up for Muslim American rights is at the heart of being an American for me. So
based on your set of experiences of travel and growing up as a Christian, how were you able to personally bring those two areas together in the way of faith, your travels, and how is that shaping you as a person of faith?
Well, as I said earlier, it really was quite a struggle, and I continued to grow in that capacity. But the first thing for me really was traveling. I think getting out of the Atlanta scene and seeing some other areas was very important, because while Atlanta is very diverse and while the United States is very diverse, if you stay in one community, even if you go to a different city, then you can see a lot of the same things. So if I go to a different country where people maybe are speaking a different language, look a little bit different, then I learn a little bit more. So I started that process by traveling to South Africa and doing HIV and AIDS prevention work. Okay. And from there, went to Ecuador, study abroad, and then just sort of took as many trips as I could to see anything I could. And I saw people worshiping in different ways. So Muslims, Christians, Baha'is, Jews, and it was a beautiful thing because they're all communing in different ways, but I felt that there was a solidarity there. There was something between us that we could all commune with together.
What are some ways, based on your experience and some of the upcoming projects that you may be working on, that you're looking to incorporate and infuse art and culture and faith in some of the works that you're doing?
The Tony Blair Faith Foundation we're holding an art auction, which will happen on World Malaria Day, 2012. Okay. And that's April 25th. And on that day, we're going to have artists from different faiths come together and express who they are. And hopefully the proceeds from that project will go to medical supplies being sent to Sierra Leone in West Africa.
What would you suggest to, say, a high school or possibly college student that does have access to technology, whether it's a phone, internet, maybe watching this program here, in the way of lifting up and building some assets that would help them be competitive, and maybe competitive is not a fair word, but strengthen their position within society based on strengthening their own personal spiritual development viewpoints. What would you say as a way to encourage people to do that?
I think collaboration is like the key. Like I cannot tell you, like just recently graduating college and even from high school, like there's so many phenomenal people all around you, and if you just sit down, bring some people to the table and talk about your interests and just develop an idea and make it a reality. One of the best student organizations I was involved with in college was called the Global Engagement Summit, and it was this conference we designed to bring students together from all over the world who had some kind of idea or project to make their community or something to make a change in the world. And this was literally an entirely student-run initiative, and it's now it's in its sixth or seventh year, and it's phenomenal. It's just grown so much. It's one of the best conferences in the nation for young people to attend to get skills and basic knowledge on how to implement social change. And that was the product of some students sitting around and talking about it. Absolutely. So I think it's really just like, don't be afraid to if you have an idea that you think is really good, talk to people about it and make it happen. And people of all ages now. I mean, there's like kids, young kids, 12, 13 years old, that are becoming social entrepreneurs. Absolutely. So it's really, I think it's an interesting time with technology and social media that pretty much anyone could become the next big change maker in the world, which I think is really exciting. So.
I'll add one thing to that. You said just say what you're thinking about if you're interested in something. If you're eager, someone else probably is eager in that institution as well. You're not the only person who's trying to do things. And so it's really important to voice it any way that you can because someone out there is listening. And if the 2 or 3 or 4, it starts that small, eventually it'll grow. She mentioned initiative that she did. There's a lot of initiatives on campuses like that. Again, it's in the newsletters, it's at the president's office, it's everywhere.
There's a long conversation that we can have about that, and would love to bring you back to talk about that a little bit more. But what I liked and enjoyed that what you shared was that technology does not have to isolate us. It can actually serve as an asset and an advancement tool to connect us with other people. And we have to be proactive in how we use technology and make sure that we use it as a tool to where we're able to do the things that you suggest, where you can connect with other people on campus, where you can connect with someone in Egypt and be able to get firsthand information. And I think what you two shared in the way of being bold and confident, you two exhibit, and I appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you so much for having us. It was a pleasure.